Very sad when morning light breaks. The red light blinked on in Studio 5 at exactly 6 a.m., but the usual burst of brightness never quite arrived. London was still half asleep, the city wrapped in that thin, gray-blue hush that exists just before sunrise. Outside the ITV building, rain clung to the pavements like unspoken thoughts. Inside, the familiar Good Morning Britain theme rolled softly into homes across the country. But something was different. Even before a single word was spoken, viewers felt it. The air was heavier. The smiles were careful. The silence between notes lingered a second too long. Susanna Reid sat straighter than usual, her hands folded neatly on the desk. Then Shepherd glanced down, then back up, as if grounding himself before stepping into deep water. To their left, the studio lights glowed, warm and reassuring, but the warmth didn't reach their eyes. And then Susanna spoke. "Good morning. We're coming on air today with some very sad breaking news." 3 sentences, calm, controlled, devastating. Across the UK, kettles clicked off mid-boil, toast burned unnoticed, phones froze in hands. In living rooms, hospital waiting areas, night shift break rooms, and quiet kitchens, people leaned closer to their screens. This was not the usual morning news: traffic delays, weather warnings, political spats neatly wrapped before the school run. This was something else, something that asked people to pause. Ben picked up where Susanna left off, his voice steady but subdued. It's one of those stories that stops you in your tracks, the kind that reminds us how fragile life can be. The camera cut briefly to the wide shot, the familiar set suddenly feeling too big, too exposed. The presenters were professionals, seasoned broadcasters who had delivered breaking news before. But today, professionalism carried a quiet ache. They spoke carefully, choosing words that carried respect. A life had been lost, a family shattered, a nation in its own small way mourning. As the details unfolded, the studio seemed to shrink. There were no dramatic graphics, no urgent music stings, just facts, just truth, just the weight of it all. Susanna paused for half a breath, barely noticeable, but human. "Our thoughts are with the loved ones affected," she said softly, "and we know many of you watching at home will be feeling this deeply." She was right. On a terraced street in Manchester, Margaret, 72, sat alone at her kitchen table. She had watched Good Morning Britain every morning since her husband passed away. The show kept her company, filled the quiet. Today she pressed her hand to her chest as tears welled. "Oh no," she whispered to no one. In a flat in East London, a young mother bounced her baby on her knee, the television murmuring in the background. When the words finally registered, she stopped moving. She thought of her own family. She thought of how quickly everything could change. Miles away, in a taxi crawling through early morning traffic, the driver turned the radio up. The news bulletin echoed the same story. He shook his head slowly. "That's terrible," he muttered, eyes fixed on the road. Back in the studio, the hosts continued, not rushing, not dramatizing. This was not a story to be consumed quickly. It was one to be carried. They spoke to correspondents who had known the person at the heart of the news. Voices cracked, memories surfaced, kindnesses remembered, moments shared, laughter now echoing painfully in the past tense. There was no attempt to polish away the emotion, and somehow that made it more powerful. At one point, Ben swallowed hard. "You don't expect to be sharing news like this when you wake up," he said, "but it's important we take a moment to reflect." The camera lingered on Susanna's face. Her eyes shone, not with tears falling, but with restraint, with empathy, with the kind of sadness that doesn't need explanation. Social media, usually loud and chaotic by this time of morning, shifted tone.
Viewers posted broken heart emojis, candle symbols, simple messages. So sad, thinking of the family. Life is too short. For once, there was no arguing, no sniping, just collective grief. Producers in the gallery watched closely, ready to move things along if needed, but no one rushed them. Even behind the scenes, there was a shared understanding. This moment mattered. When the show finally transitioned to the next segment, gentler, quieter than usual, it felt like stepping out of a chapel after a vigil. Necessary, but jarring. Still, the mood lingered. Throughout the morning, the presenters returned to the story with care, offering updates without sensationalism. Each time they acknowledged the emotional toll. Each time they reminded viewers they weren't alone in feeling it. "Be kind to yourselves today," Susanna said near the end of the show. It wasn't in the script. It didn't need to be. By 9 a.m., as the program wrapped up, London was fully awake. Buses roared, phones rang, meetings began, but something had shifted, a crack in the routine, a reminder that beneath the noise of daily life, loss can arrive without warning. As the closing music played, Ben looked across the desk. "Thanks for being with us this morning," he said. "We know it's been a tough one." The red light blinked off. In the sudden quiet of the studio, no one spoke for a moment. Susanna exhaled slowly. A producer handed her a glass of water. Someone else murmured, "Well done." She nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere, with the family who had woken up to a world forever changed. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight pushed through the clouds in thin, hopeful streaks. And across the country, people carried on, making tea, catching trains, answering emails, but with a softness they hadn't felt an hour earlier. Some hugged their children a little tighter. Some texted someone they hadn't spoken to in years. Some simply sat quietly, letting the sadness pass through them. That was the strange power of mornings like this. Good Morning Britain had opened as it always did, trying to make sense of the world. But this time, it didn't offer answers or outrage or debate, just truth, just compassion, just a shared moment of grief that reminded everyone watching that behind every headline is a human story, and behind every screen, a human heart. Very sad news, yes, but also a quiet reminder, even in devastation, connection endures.